Tonight, it's a very special episode as Sam, Mike, and Jeff welcome veteran actor Bruce McGill, a.k.a. Jack Dalton. Will the man who's acted opposite Daniel Day-Lewis and Russell Crowe be able to withstand the hijinks of these so-called hosts? Find out next on Making Fun of MacGyver. It's Making Fun of MacGyver, a rib-tickling takedown of our favorite 80s adventure show, Muppet Babies. No, it's MacGyver, starring Sam Jordan as the skeptic, Mike Garland as the diehard, and Jeff Hess as the scientist.
Name's MacGyver.
Welcome, everybody, to Making Fun of MacGyver, the show where we recap, review, and ridicule every episode of the original MacGyver series. I'm Sam Jordan, your host, and as usual, I'm joined by my two fellow MacGyverites, the D-Day of this domain, Mike Garland.
Dan, glad to meet you.
And the Bluto of the bunch, Jeff Hess.
This podcast is officially on double secret probation.
Fellow IMDb aficionados, are you ready to hear the inside scoop from the man who appeared on 18 episodes of the original MacGyver series?
I would love it.
He's a powerhouse. We're getting the best people from every season.
Because we're moments away from Making Fun of MacGyver, episode 35 for us, and it's our interview with Bruce McGill, a.k.a. Jack Dalton. But first, it's our opening gambit. Well, I don't have to tell you folks out there, a new catchphrase is sweeping the nation. It happened organically, you would say, in the last few weeks, and now I'm seeing it everywhere. I'm seeing it on social media. I'm seeing it on T-shirts, bumper stickers, foam fingers at ball games. You know it. I know. I don't even need to say what it is, but Mike, do you know what it is?
Is it possibly cream me again?
Yes, that is it.
And by the way, I have to ask, what's the foam finger look like? Does it look like this? Is that the foam finger you speak of?
Mike giving me a choice digit right there. But yeah, so you said that we still can't figure out why in the middle of talking about potentially the back-to-school season coming up, you said...
Cream me again.
And you said it so matter-of-factly, but people are embracing it. They're loving it. And you now, Jeff, tell me what your take is on this, because we caught Mike saying this really odd phrase on his DJ shift for a country station in Pennsylvania. We caught him red-handed. He pretended I manipulated the audio. That's fine. But then he's not playing 4D chess, not even quite 3D because it's Mike. Let's say he's playing 2D chess. So last week when he's on the air, he says, you know what, I'm gonna actually, work it in. Why don't you guys listen? I'm going to really say it this time. So we've got a clip of him, again, another shift on this country station. So this is where he says, I'm going to say it on purpose. And let's see if you hear any difference or if this is inappropriate to be going out over the airways. So here we go.
Thursday's high, only 84 degrees. With your Red Nation weather, I'm CBS 21's Stacey Hanrahan.
Thanks a lot, Stacey. It looks like this weather is going to cream me again. Don't let it cream you. 93 degrees in Walnut Bottom. Seek shelter. Find a pool. Do something cool.
I think that's faked. Sam, play that back. I'm pretty sure that's manipulated.
Wait, you think that one's manipulated? But what
I
the
think
first
that
one you
one's
think
faked.
is real?
Well, because we established the first one was real.
Right.
And this one doesn't sound anything like that.
Well, you know how we can establish it's real? Because he can't even say when he said it at another time. You know what I mean? How would you say that phrase at another time and not remember it? So he said it live on the air. And this time he's saying it like, oh boy, I hope this weather doesn't cream me again. But the first time he's like, these kids are going back to school. Cream me again. And then there was a in there.
So yeah, I can only think, and I look, I listened to our episodes once. I listened to our Save MacGyver podcast episodes one time, then I move on. But I can only assume we had to have been talking about me getting beat up at some point in the past where I said like, they're going to cream me again. And that can be the only scenario that I can think I used that.
Well, I'll tell you what. We'll let it rest. We'll stop giving you guff about this if you can ever identify the show and the moment. If you can go back and find it, we will. But I don't think it's there. I think you just said it instinctively. You're thinking about back to school. It's hot weather. Ugh, and you say it. But all right.
I think that one's faked. That one sounds like a deep fake to me.
That last one the last one is fake.
Yeah.
But people are loving it. And I see bumper stick, I see, pins. I'm embracing this. So hang on, folks, because this is the catchphrase of 2021 at least. Another catchphrase.
It's funny. I actually had to say that to someone this week. I had to say cream me again, but I was at a cream soda shop. So I ran out and I was like, hey, barkeep.
Cream me again.
Funny. I was at Starbucks. And I got some kind of latte, and it seemed just a little too coffee-ish. I like, 80% whipped cream and 20% coffee in my coffee. And I had to go back. I said, hey, barista.
Cream me again.
And they did it. And they're like, oh, you listen to making fun of me? Yeah. I'm the co-host. Yeah.
Well, I know that my girlfriend listens because last night when we were in the bedroom and things were wrapping up, she also said, cream me again.
I'm surprised you guys haven't heard about the revival of the 70s band Cream. They're going on a revival tour.
Cream me again. Oh, wow. That's like a horrible Cream cover band.
Cash rules everything around me.
Oof.
I can tell.
Yeah. Play that Wu-Tang song again.
Cream me again.
Okay. Another thing that people are saying, not so much as Cream Me Again, but we played another joke on Mike last week. Well, the first joke. I'm sorry.
Another?
I'm sorry.
When have I been the ass of your jokes previously?
So, at the beginning of the show, before Mike joined us, me and Jeff said, to celebrate prankster Jack Dalton on the show, let's prank Mike. And we're going to see how many times we can say his name before he says, okay, guys, why do you keep saying my name? What is going on here? And this son of a bee never said it, never noticed we kept saying his name. So I've done the hard labor, and this was hard. And at some point, I have to speed up this track because it takes forever. I don't want you to listen. But here is many minutes of all the times we said Mike in our last episode. I'm sorry, folks.
But first of all, before you press play, is it just when you said it? Because I definitely said Mike, my own
You
self.
said it many times. Yep.
But not in reference to me, in reference to the character.
Right. All right, here we go. Too many mics. The Mike of the crew, Mike Garland.
Mike, isn't your Twitter handle Mike on Mike?
I think it's just Mike.
So now we'll have Mike on Mike tonight.
Mike on Mike action, yes.
And Mike enthusiasts got on Mike because he had never seen the 79 cult classic hit, The Warriors, but Mike has now seen the movie. So Mike, of course, Mike's like, yes. Mike, what are you listening to these days?
Michael Bolton.
How can we be lovers when we can't be friends, Mike?
Michael Bolton in concert one time.
I'm very similar to Mike. Mike has... So let's listen to Mike.
Mike, you've got decades of... Man, Midday Mike's going to get a sternly worded letter from me.
It's Mike versus Jeff sing-off this season. Last week, Mike suffered a defeat.
Die, Midday Mike on the mic.
Mike.
Cream me again.
McGarland. Question, Mike, when you hear that...
Photos of them with their buddy Mike.
But welcome, Mike. Welcome, Mike, the female Mike. And welcome to you, Mike.
Like they gave this Mike the name Mike, and then you're like, uh-oh, it's a woman, her name's Mike. Play up that, hey, Mike is coming, we gotta save Mike, where's Mike?
When you first see this Mike, not this Mike I'm looking at right here, but the Mike, the female Mike, to go along with the mannish name Mike, but I thought this Mike, not the greatest looking Mike.
This Mike was played by, and in this case, Mike.
No, you know a Michelle who goes by Mike.
Mike was the nickname for Michelle.
But Mike, are you...
So that's after Mike, damn it. They start trading some Mike stories.
To me or to Mike?
Not this Mike or that Mike. Any Mikes. I don't want any exploded Mikes.
Mike, the interrogating Mike, and...
That's right, Mike.
Gonna find out something about this episode, Mike.
Have a time capsule commercial, Mike?
Did you know that, Mike?
And what does your card start with, Mike? Mike. Coming to Mike's house at night. Oh, here I am at Mike's house, recording, walking around with a mic over Mike. And your name is Midday Mike?
Yes, and here's why I'm Midday Mike. So I was always just Midday Mike.
Mike has Mike. Mike's his name is Mike.
Mike the Thrill.
Midday Mike could be in voice tracking, then pop over and Mike Garland.
Your name is Midday Mike?
Yes, I'm always Midday Mike.
Let's do it, Mike.
We open up at the church where Mike tossed in with Mike.
What if they were both named Mike? Mike and Mike. Wasn't there a radio show called Mike and Mike?
Mike and Mike in the morning.
But Mike Golick, so there is still a Mike, just not the other Mike Golick, the younger Mike Golick.
Ever since Mike Golick,
If I can't get Mike Golick uncensored.
Jack and Mike are talking.
Hold on. Mike, that one's to you, Mike.
Jack, Mac, and Mike. MacGyver and Mike, he dispatches Mike
Mike and MacGyver. Does it, Mike?
so that Mac and Mike can get out,
MacGyver, Mike? So me and Mike, even though Mike has the most, but I don't remember. Do you, Mike?
tying up Mac and Mike.
And he also gives Mike kind of vague thing with Mike. What do you think, Mike?
That's a Mike dunk on a Mike. Mike drive-by Mike it's Mike on Mike violence.
And Mike,
I think Mike should go first this episode. So Mike.
Mike is Mike. It's nice to have a Mike because there's Mike and there's Mac and then there's Mac and there's Mike and then Mike and Mac and just it's very confusing, especially when you're with a Mike on the podcast. Then there's Mike on Mike on Mike. Just so much Mike.
The introduction of Mike. Mike, what do you think? Then Mike says it. Mike. Mike. Mike.
Mike.
Mike.
Mike.
Mike.
Mike.
Mike.
Mike.
Mike.
Mike.
Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike. Mike.
So I feel like I listened to the podcast again because I could tell where we were in the episode by what the mics were in reference to and how hard I was trying to because in my mind, I was having a competition with you to see who could say more. So I'm like, I can really cram 7 or 8 mics into one sentence.
I was the dullard that didn't get it.
Oh my God.
It's a
I had
lot
no
of
idea.
mics.
So I counted them up.
Did you do the count?
What's
okay.
the guess, guys?
I'm gonna go
It's
with
got to be like
220.
500.
It's 210. 210 mics were said.
And God bless you for listening to the whole damn thing.
That's a mic every 30 seconds. The podcast was an hour 10.
Of course, we padded the stats at the end with the chant. I counted those as separate. And when you say Michael Bolton, I was counting that, even though it's the full name. But yeah, 210 times. So forget about. We make fun of Quail and MacGyver, but
Take that, Quail.
Yeah, okay. We're still in the opening gambit section, by the way.
Oh, good.
Let's quickly, Jeff. You did the first ever Making Fun of MacGyver road trip on your way to see the Phoenix Suns play the LA Clippers. Tell me where you went.
So I went to the LA Police Museum, which you may or may not recognize from
Twice
I'm
Stung.
blanking on the name of the episode. Twice Stung, which notably features Jim Crow and the closest reading of a newspaper in history. I was by the alleyway where that scene was filmed. I felt moved by that close reading. But it's just like a medium size-ish brown brick building. I didn't get to go in because it closes at 4. But more importantly, the Suns kicked the shit out of the Clippers.
And it looks the same. The facade looks the same as it did in 86.
I was surprised when you made that little collage and I looked at the picture. I'm like, oh, that thing looks exactly the same.
Yeah, yeah. Good concrete foundation there. Good structure. I don't know. I'm throwing out construction terms.
It's also fun driving into LA because you look at the scenery and you're like, you can see where they filmed all these episodes, because the Southern California hills, they have a very distinctive look. And I didn't recognize it from movies until I went there. And the first time I went, I'm like, this looks like every movie I've ever seen in my life. And once you see it, it's hard to unsee. Doesn't happen as much now because they spend a lot more money on movies, but used to be just Southern California hills everywhere.
So maybe inside they've got a faux police station as well, and maybe that's where they filmed the interior that day. Or maybe not. I'm not sure.
That'd be my guess. I should have gone in. I should have looked up their schedule, but I took a nap.
All right, it's our first ever Making Fun of MacGyver road trip, and Jeff did it solo, but we're hoping to do some joint trips together in coming years and invite you, listeners, as well to join us, but, one thing at a time. Okay, last thing in the opening gambit, let's welcome our new listeners. Let's welcome our new listener, James in Boston. We got a new fan who wrote in. We love when anyone writes in, Twitter, Facebook, email. We love it. And James in Boston says, as we're going to hear in a moment in the viewer mail, he's very much in favor of extending the viewer mail intro. So let's give the people, let's give the people what they deserve, what they want. And here it is, the debut of the new 17-second viewer mail introduction.
Short.
So James in Boston writes, love the podcast, guys, here in Boston, Massachusetts. Keep up the great work. Huge fan of the longer version of the viewer mailbag intro. The more, the better. It puts a smile on my face every time I hear it. Keep them coming. Well, thank you, James.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard, James. We hope that not only do you enjoy the new stuff we're going to throw at you, but that you'll take the time and go back and check out all the failures that we've had over the last year and a half.
I'm going to need you to read that letter back, but in like a Boston accent.
All right. James in Boston writes, love the podcast, guys, here in Boston, Mass. Keep up the great work. Huge fan of the longer version of the viewer mailbag. I don't know, that's all. I can't keep that up. We also got
That's wicked good.
Mia in Australia writes, OMFG. What does that stand for, guys? Would we know what that stands for? She writes, OMFG, so my brother and I have a running joke about Michael Bolton. Well, to be honest, I used to tease him and say Michael Bolton was his favorite singer. So for his 30th birthday, I ordered these coasters for his present. She sends a picture of these Michael Bolton coasters. And last episode, Mike, you profess your love for Michael Bolton.
I do enjoy Michael Bolton. It's been, I guess, about 6 years now since I saw him in concert in Amish country, Lancaster, PA, at the American Music Theater. But I still have fond memories of that show. And it didn't prompt me to go buy any of his music or go to a follow-up concert, but as long as my brain still works, I'll still have those moments tucked away.
So that's a strange concert to have been to. Is that the strangest concert you've ever been to? Michael Bolton in Amish country?
I mean, it was like an actual modern amphitheater. It just happens to be in Lancaster.
Because I saw George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic in the gym of... like 2,000 person tiny all white private school outside of Columbus.
Oh, that's up
with
there
like 200 people in this gym, and it was George Clinton and the Parliament Funkadelic. It was weird. Like it was like imagine them on your high school musical stage. That's what the experience was like. But they really came out and performed. So bizarre show.
I mean, I guess I saw the Beach Boys post game at a Dallas Mavericks basketball game. I have seen Hall & Oates post-game, Tampa Bay Rays. You know, Neil Diamond was at a regular amphitheater, so I guess that just is a regular show. But I don't know, if we're going to take region and venue, sure, the Michael Bolton Amish Country Lancaster, PA show could be about the most random thing I've seen.
All right, well, that wraps up the mailbag, and there's no flashback this time because we're not doing a normal episode recap. We're taking a break, as we occasionally do. This time we got a special episode. We got in touch with veteran actor Bruce McGill. He was Jack Dalton on MacGyver. He's had a great career, and he spent a good chunk of time with us. And he had some great insight, some really good stories. So sit back. We're going to talk to you. We'll give you our thoughts on the interview after we play this back. But sit back now and listen to our interview with Bruce McGill on Making Fun of MacGyver. And we have a very special guest joining us today. MacGyver fans know and love him as Jack Dalton, Mac's lovable, mustachioed, mischief-making buddy, but he's also had an amazing career in film and television. He was D-Day in Animal House, and his list of films includes Lincoln, My Cousin Vinny, Cliffhanger, The Sum of All Fears, The Insider, Ali, and many more, while his TV credits include Rizzoli and Isles, Family Guy, and the recent MacGyver reboot. So we are thrilled to welcome Bruce McGill to the show. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, how are you?
We are great, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us numbskulls here. Making Fun MacGyver, the show title kind of implies what we do. We have some fun with the cheesy elements of the 80s, but there's no having fun with the excitement and the character Jack Dalton that you brought to the original Mac. We loved it. We just watched your first appearance, Jack of Lies, and you steal the show. So if we could, let's focus on MacGyver, for these first few minutes, because we have a lot of questions about MacGyver. I know it's kind of in your past history, but what do you recall about that first appearance for Jack of Lies, and was it known that you'd be coming back to the show?
No, it was not known, and that was, at the time I didn't do television. I was it was a very different time now, and I was a feature guy, and it was thought back then, and there was a degree of truth to it, that if they could watch you for free on television, they wouldn't come to the movies to watch you. And, there was guys that couldn't wait to get a TV series, and there were guys like me because I was a theater guy, and I was living in New York, and I would like to do the plays that I did, and then get a feature film and go off and earn a little movie money and come back and go back into the theater. And it was, I guess I'd done maybe 6 or 8, 10 features at the time, and they wanted me to do this MacGyver thing, and I had seen the show, and I thought it was kind of cool, but I didn't want to do it. I said, no, thank you. Thanks for your interest, as I usually said. And they had a guy that had been the director of photography on Animal House. Charlie Carell was his name. And they told him that they tried to get me and that I wouldn't do it. And he said, I'll get him, because he knew me. And he's gone now, but he was a great guy. And, one of those people that you just felt like saying yes to. So he called me in New York from L.A. He was directing the episode. And he called me and said, no, was he directing? Yeah, I think he was directing. And he said, what are you doing, D-Day? And I said, it's February in New York. I'm shivering. And he said, well, get on a plane, come out here and do this show. You don't have to worry about it. You just do one. You die at the end. You don't have to come back. And I thought, well, that's interesting. It is cold here. So I did. I said, okay, I'll do it, thinking that would be it. And I haven't seen it. I don't know if I ever saw it, but I know the demise of Jack in the first episode was actually his plane going over the horizon, and we didn't actually, see the pennies in his eyes. So I did it, and it was fine, and I liked Richard, and I liked the people. It was it's a fun character. I liked the character. And months later, I didn't pay any attention to it. Went on back to my feature theater life, and agent calls and says they say they want you to do an episode of MacGyver. And I said, really? What part? Same part. And I said, well, that guy, I thought that guy died. That character died. And he said, and I quote, if Bobby Ewing can come back in the shower, anything is possible in television. And that's a reference to Dallas, where the guy playing Bobby Ewing, I guess it was Patrick Duffy, left the show, and then they wrote him out as if he had died. So they decided, and he decided that he wanted to go back, and they wanted him back. So they made him reappear in a shower scene with his girlfriend or wife. I don't know. I didn't watch Dallas. Anyway, that's how it happened. They said, come back, and apparently when my plane crashed over the horizon in a heroic fashion, I just eked out my life.
Oh, it's a great story. I'm so glad we asked you about that. And I guess you're probably happy they didn't ask for you to come back in the shower as well.
I wouldn't have done it if it hadn't been for Charlie Carell saying, oh, come on and do this. You die at the end, which is, I feel completely differently now. Every time I get a part that I die in, like this one I'm doing now, I go, dang, I kind of like to live for another season. And anyway, I did it and liked it, and they liked me in the role a lot. And the reason they liked me so much was I animated Richard Dean Anderson as MacGyver, because they worked him so hard, I have to tell you. If you're the name character in a 1-hour television series for a network in those days, and your name is the name of the show, you are going to work a lot. And it's very, very, very draining. So he tended to be, not to be unkind about it, but he tended to be a little laconic. So when I got in there and with a little exuberant energy, which aggravated his character, MacGyver, they were good friends, but Jack drove him nuts. And the people in creative control liked it when MacGyver, who was so cool generally, was knocked off his spot by a benign friend. And so I remember, I don't know which one it was, maybe it was, I don't know the names of the episodes, it's so long ago. But I was hamming it up pretty good, which they wanted me to do. And I said to Richard, I was just getting to know him well, and I said, look, I don't mean to be chewing the scenery around you and, trying to steal scenes, but that's what and he stopped me, he said, oh, please, take them whenever you can, because he really appreciated the help with the load, And if you look back on them, I know they gave me so much dialogue exposition, because that's what's really difficult in a TV series. You have so much to learn, and then if you're doing them back to back, you've got to learn the next one right away. So I talked a lot to set up the shows, and in fact, across my career, one of the people always ask, how do you get a career like that where you've worked steadily at a high level for so long? And I said, well, there are a lot of things that go into it, but one of the things is if you can joyfully deliver exposition in an entertaining or at least compelling fashion, because nobody really loves to do it at first, but it's storytelling, and every story starts with once upon a time there was a dark house in the woods. It's exposition, so somebody has to do it, and I embraced it because I realized how absolutely important it is to the art or craft, if you will, of storytelling. And also it made me very employable, and I found ways to energize it. That's what I always try to do, besides learning it really well. If you learn it really well, then you can start to mess with the music of the language and all the things the tools we use in the theater, where you don't have soundtracks most of the time. It's you and the audience and the lights, and the space. So I used all those skills or crafts or talents or whatever you want to call them to try to jazz up that stuff so it was interesting while getting the job done. Richard always called it delivering the mail. He hated it. Let him deliver the mail. I hate it.
It definitely showed all that gravitas you brought to that character. So our show is recapping, reviewing, and ridiculing every episode of the original series. So, we're only, a year and a half into the show in the original run, and then you come on in this episode, and yeah, it is kind of like a breath of fresh air, and we're excited knowing that you come up in, many more times. But you kind of touched on this a little bit there, but I just want to play a little word association here. So maybe just throw out a few words or shortened sentences. When I say MacGyver to you, Bruce McGill, where does your mind go when you hear the word MacGyver?
To my mustache and Richard's hair.
Yeah, that mustache. I was going to save this for one of our last questions, but now I'm going to skyrocket it to the second or third. That mustache was the stuff of legends. So any tips out there for men looking to emulate the Bruce McGill / Jack Dalton stash?
Well, it's the D-Day mustache, basically, and underneath it is, if you look at it in any straight-on shots, it's not balanced. It's not equal. Because one side of my lip, I got, only once got in a fight when I was young. Anyway, I had a busted lip underneath it, and it sort of, when it grew back a little crooked. So it's not completely balanced, and I would sometimes balance it. When I played D-Day, it's the same mustache, basically. But in D-Day, I waxed it a little. And in MacGyver, I just sort of let it go. And it was just how my hair grew, and you don't want to get it too long because then it's disgusting. You don't always want to have a little bite of your breakfast at 4:30 in the afternoon.
And I guess, Bruce, I should say, by the way, Mike Garland, damn glad to meet you. So when
that a clip-on?
I love it. I practice so hard on the one joke that I don't have a proper rebuttal to your follow-up joke. I apologize.
Well, it's an unfair field because if it's your life, you're not practicing. It's my life we're talking about. It's my life. Wait a minute. To be pretentious, it's my life in art.
And you are quite good at your craft, that is for sure. What do you think made Jack so special? Because you just said you thought maybe it was going to be a one-off when you appeared in Jack of Lies, but clearly the character had some roots that brought you back 16 times. So why was Jack so special?
Because he made MacGyver better. I know this because the producers would talk about it when they were talking about, and they tried to get me to join the show as a regular, and I wouldn't do it. But for some of the reasons I described earlier about wanting to, and I would have made a lot more money. But it would have been all I would have been doing for those 6.5 years. And in those 6.5 years, I did some of my, favorite features. And though it was very funny them trying to get me to do it and me not doing it. It was very interesting dance, to say the least. So I would sign up for, I think the most I ever signed up for was 3 shows. And when they want you for a regular, it's a whole different deal-making structure. Because they know, the powers that be and your representation knows that they're basically buying you out of the market. So they have to compensate for that. And I still wouldn't do it against a lot of people's advice. I just said, no, that messes up the big plan. This show is great and I like it, but it's a bit of an interloper into what I set out to do when I started at whatever age I started. So they thought I made Richard better as MacGyver, and made MacGyver just more textured and more fun. And it was still the MacGyverisms and the capers and the trouble we got into. And I can't remember whether this was an actual line or it just was something I told myself. But I feel like it was really a line. I was always getting him into trouble, into scrapes. But that's what do you do if you're MacGyver? Somebody's got to get you into trouble. So I think I said to myself that I said, hey, it's fair, it's 50-50. I get us into trouble, you get us out. And that is the essence of the relationship. And I really don't know, and I'm not, if you guys run across it, let me know. I don't know whether I actually said that to him or just it was a mindset in the way I went about it. Because it was a really, it was clearly the show was called MacGyver, and just because I was on it one time, they didn't call it MacGyver and Jack Dalton. But it was clear that they appreciated my youthfulness a great deal, and because I wasn't on it all the time, I was never burned out. And the other thing about an hour TV series, especially in those days for a network when there was only 3 networks, they had plenty of money, so they worked overtime like would kill you. I mean, every Friday night was 18 hours. Every Friday was an 18-hour day because they didn't have turnaround problems for the Saturday, Sunday. So if you were on it all day, every day, it would just, by the second month, into the second month, you were fried. And nobody was getting enough sleep that was on the crew or Richard. And it was just great for me to go in there with my, fresh off of whatever I'd been doing in New York or, having gotten plenty of sleep. And for me, it was great. I lived in New York at the time when I started it, and I lived in what a typical New York stage actor's little apartment was. So when I would go to Vancouver, and then they put me in this then new hotel, or a little, residence apartment that had a kitchen, it was like, holy cow, this is the greatest. Oh, and they're going to bring me fresh seats? Awesome! Oh, towels too, great. So it was great for me, and except for the heavy line load and the hours, it was not tremendously taxing because, it was an adventure show, but my part of it was basically rooted comedy. And that's, I don't want to say I was comic relief for MacGyver because we got into scrapes together, and some of them were, the one where I was brainwashed, that one cracked me up. That was just so stupid. Sorry. Oh, right, the show's called Making Fun of MacGyver, so I can say that.
Yeah, no, perfectly okay. And that's the thing is, your character never got stale because they didn't roll you out every week. You were a nice addition when you would come on. I actually, as someone that's 43 years old and grew up watching the show, I loved the Jack Dalton episodes. And I'm not saying that because you're here, but you were the one regular plus one that always stuck with me versus some of his other sidekicks that would get killed off or have some unfortunate ending. So through the 16 episodes that you were in, do you have a favorite MacGyver episode that you're part of?
No, because I don't remember them that well. I mean, I remember it all as one relationship between Jack Dalton and MacGyver and situations. So I don't really remember having a favorite one. It was fun having the baby and playing my throat for the baby. That was fun. But I don't really break them up. I just it's not something that I've dwelled on either. It's so long ago, and although the only thing that lasts really, because I see her all the time, is I met my wife on that show. She was the assistant director, and that's where we met, and we're still together and happy about it. So that's the biggest thing that came out of MacGyver. That and my mother loved the show because I never killed anyone, I never cussed, and I never died. Except for the first time I sort of died. So she loved it. So it was a win-win-win for me.
The eye twitch for the Jack Dalton character. Who came up with that?
Yeah, that was in the script. I guess it's the first one. It was a character thing, and it was a great character thing. The difficulty was not to overdo it, like not to squinch your face up. Just to, an involuntary twitch, if you've ever had one, is just the strangest thing. You're not doing it, but there you can look at it, like if it's sometimes in your thumb or your finger or even a muscle anywhere in your body. If it starts doing that, it's just the most interesting thing that you're not in control of it. So to get that feeling was I practiced in front of the mirror a lot for that.
Did do you ever contribute any dialogue for Jack? I mean, so much of that seems like ad libs or off the top. Or was it all scripted, or did you sometimes wing it and they kept it
very
in?
carefully scripted, but that's the job of a good actor, is to make what they write sound like it's the thing your guy would say. I had that experience on this show, and the director was saying, "Oh, the dialogue, it sounds like exactly what you would say." And then he stopped himself and said, "I guess that's what a good actor does, isn't it?" I said, "Yes, it is. That's what we do. You make it sound like the only thing that could come out of your guy's mouth at the time." And I'm sure there was a discussion about dialogue, but what I try to do, and I've worked with some of the great, like Lincoln, Tony Kushner, he writes like people breathe, and Steven Spielberg was very hands-on as well. But we would still talk about this thing that had been scripted for, Steven had the rights to the book Team of Rivals for 10 years, so this script was highly evolved, but still we would talk about it. And I would always learn it exactly as it was written, and then if I thought there was something that could improve it based on my work delving into the character, we would discuss it. And nobody, including super rigorous guys like Michael Mann say, ever is deaf to that. If they will listen, and if they think it's better, or even that you are more comfortable with it, so you are better. I've never had anybody say no, but I've never worked with the guy. Who was the guy that? There's some of the guys like David Milch, I guess, was apparently super adamant, and maybe the Sopranos guy. But I never ran into anybody that didn't want to listen if you thought you could help their character. And I never do it to other people's characters, because that is really not my business. But I'll fix up, like now I'm doing a guy with a Southern accent, and some of the guys that are writing it obviously never lived in the South or heard the South, and they're just usages that they get kind of just regionally wrong. And I'm pretty fearless about it because I'm respectful, and I always learn what they wrote. So it's not like I'm just saying it this way because it's easier for me. And it was the same thing in MacGyver.
So obviously Jack's relationship with MacGyver is so important, that chemistry there. Talk a little bit about what it was like working with Richard Dean Anderson all those years. Do you guys keep in touch, or just what was that relationship like on and off set?
Really great on the set, and once in a while in the beginnings in Vancouver we would go out. But the truth is, I was talking about the hours earlier. When you're on a show like that, and I've heard other people that were on series together, not so much sitcoms, but hour action shows, you have so little time to yourself to even do your laundry or have a shower and get enough sleep that you don't do a lot of hanging out. And then, of course, whenever I was not doing MacGyver, I was at the far other end of the continent, lived in New York at the time. And I was very, active in the theater and in movies through those years. So Richard and I had a great working relationship, really great. Once we had that conversation, I sort of apologized for chewing the scenery, and he said, well, the opposite. He said, please help me with this bear. So we had a great relationship, and he doesn't, I'm not saying he's a recluse, but doesn't circulate much, even when I lived in L.A., where I sort of still do. I have a house there, but I've moved to Texas because I'm done with L.A. God. But we were not close friends off of the set, although if I ever would see him, it was a warm relationship. I liked him a lot. I enjoyed working with him, and I thought he was just a perfect MacGyver.
Yeah, we agree totally. All right, we're going to begrudgingly take ourselves out of the 80s now, as hard as it is for us to do. We're trapped in nostalgia. But let's talk about the new MacGyver, the newer MacGyver with Lucas Till, the reboot in 2016, and your role on that, and how that went for you, and just any experiences from working with the newer MacGyver.
Well, it's interesting because he was new at it, and I had been with Richard as Richard went through it, and so Lucas was in the throes of, oh my God, what did I say yes to? Because the workload is just staggering. And he's a really nice guy, and so we had a lot of conversations. He would pricked my brain about the original, and about how Richard dealt with various things, not just the performance, but the workload, the drain on you can't imagine it. Nobody that hasn't done it, you may think you can imagine it, but because it's not just physical, although physically it is grueling, because most people who have a job for 8 or 9 hours a day, and this is not counting getting to and from the set, 12. Every day is 12, and every Friday was 18. And it's one thing to say 18 hours. It's a completely different thing to deliver at performance level, too, because that's another kind of energy. And the memorization away from the set. You've got to memorize the stuff. And then in the voiceovers to explain the MacGyverisms, that was sort of the straw that broke Richard's back. And, because you can shoot all the inserts you want, but when you're making those MacGyverisms work, you have to have that voiceover to help, half of the audience anyway along. And it's just something, a little sugar makes it go down, I guess. But so Lucas and I talked about that a lot. And the way that came up is they called and asked me. And I thought, well, I can't think of as good a reason not to do it as I can to do it, which is just, I like full circle things in my life. I like the virtuous circle of capitalism, and I like the fact that I'm building a house 8 houses away from the house I was a baby and grew up in. And, so I know every little rock, and the trees are all a lot bigger, and the creek's been cleaned up, but it's a great thing. So full circle deals appeal to me. And I like to work. I enjoy the process. I mean, this one is challenging because of COVID. I mean, and Canada is way more locked down than the U.S. was when I left. And I've been pretty much solitary confinement except when I get out to work. And I'm not working that much because this is a real intense action show, and I have mostly dialogue. So this has been very interesting. I'll be glad when this circle closes and I go back to Texas. But that one, they asked. I couldn't think of a good reason not to do it, and I'm glad I did it. I didn't think as much of it as I thought of the original, but then I saw some of the original ones, and it's kind of hokey sometimes too. So you never know. It's like my wife and I call it the El Coyote syndrome. There's a restaurant in Los Angeles, and not that she's a big fan of Mexican food, but I said, we got to go to this place I used to go all the time. It's great. El Coyote Mexican restaurant. So we went to it, and it was terrible. And I realized it was probably terrible the 20 years before when I was going to it. But then it was about margaritas and, salsa, basically, and the food was second. So the El Coyote syndrome is when you remember something being great, and then you see it or experience it again, and it's not so great. So I don't know, but I just thought our MacGyver was, I call it the real MacGyver, and then I correct myself and call the original MacGyver.
My friend Andy and I talk about the concept of nostalgia, just like you just mentioned there, and how nostalgia seems to be so much better when it's in your mind versus playing out in real life for all those same reasons. So you came back to the new MacGyver. Michael DeBar made an appearance on the new MacGyver as well, but all of a sudden, new MacGyver gets canceled for seemingly no reason. It was doing well in the ratings on CBS. Have you been following this grassroots Save MacGyver movement that people have been trying to...
Not in the least. I didn't even know it was canceled.
Well, yeah, the show, it did get canceled. Probably, I think they announced it maybe February or March, and then in April, just the last episode of the season ends up being the last episode, but you now have a group of people on social media using hashtag Save MacGyver to try to bring the show back. And they haven't been totally successful yet, but I think they've gotten some attention of folks. But does it surprise you hearing...
My opinion is they will lose.
I was going to say, does it surprise you to hear that the show was canceled?
Not particularly. I mean, this is very slippery business, and now these networks are struggling, as you can well imagine, with the streamers. And, there's a lot of reasons to take a job. And the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, I've been looking for jobs that would put me in business with Netflix and Amazon. So that's not the only reason I'm doing this one. This one, I was a big fan of the Reacher books. They were my guilty pleasure reading. No matter how violent they are, I always liked them. I think the character is a great invention. So that was appealing. And I've done a couple of Netflix projects. So they know who I am, or at least some people at Netflix know who I am, and I needed to get another big streamer, and the other big one is Amazon. The networks have a struggle. It's a different animal now. But again, whenever the things are going badly seemingly in the business at large, I boil it all the way down to what do? We are storytelling, and for some reason, human animal, going all the way back to the caves, loves to be told a story. And if you can tell a good story, what you get paid to tell a story will go from nothing up to what I consider ridiculous amounts of money for some movie stars. But the essential fact that people they like stories never changes. That is, and that will outlive COVID and Bruce. So it's just a matter of how you tell it. But the networks are struggling because they have, they've got to sell commercials, and sometimes I like commercials because it lets me get up and do the dishes or something and not watch what they're trying to sell. But I don't know. It doesn't affect me at all that shows get canceled or not canceled. I was surprised that when I was doing Rizzoli and Isles, we were the number one show on that network, and they got a new president of the network, and the first thing he did was cancel his number one show and put something in it that never got ratings. And it's just, there's a lot of ego floating around in that business, and it's just, as I say, it's a slippery business. And now you inject streaming in it, and it becomes, my God, they're going through so much material, and I think they're running into the problem of thinking that talent, I'm talking mostly about writers and showrunners and people that conceive of, develop, and write the show. Well, there's tons of them, but there's not that many people that can really do a great job of it. So a lot of the stuff that they're putting out doesn't stick, and it shouldn't stick. It's crap, and but it doesn't matter. It's when you got crap, you flush the toilet and you get some new crap, and and sometimes they have a hit. And but even the hits now in the streaming world may go 4 seasons. Never like what are these shows like Grey's Anatomy or the NCIS shows? I mean, that's just crazy. But that's old school, and that I used to think, God, I wish I'd get one that would go like that. But now I'm so glad I don't have one, because this is the job I'm doing now is a good job, good payday, 1-year contract. Because at my age, as my wife informs me, when's it going to be my turn? Like, yeah, it's great. You love acting. You love, getting a job and doing the job. But that's yours. When, let's have a little time for ours. And I have to say, on this one's super bad because she can't travel to. Usually, she goes with me if it's someplace she would find interesting. But it's so onerous to get in and out of Canada now, and she's Canadian. It's just she was born in Canada. She's a U.S. citizen now. But this is 4 months away in the time we're trying to build a house in Texas, and it's just. Next week I'll be 71, and I know I'm a realistic guy. You don't live forever. I still feel pretty good. I still do. I'll have a big fight with one of the characters at the end of this series, so I'm still physically fine and all that stuff. But you never know. So it's time to, spend more time smelling the roses and less time digging the bed.
So, Bruce, you have a lot of projects going on. What is the one thing you're doing now? What has you in Canada?
My inability to say no. Actually, I'm doing a series produced by Amazon based on the Jack Reacher novels written by Lee Child. The series is called Reacher. This is the first season. It's based on his first book in which he introduced the character of Jack Reacher. It's called The Killing Floor. And it's 8 episodes. We're shooting in around, all over around Toronto, Canada. And I'm playing the bad guy, but it's not exactly the novel, because as the showrunner, Nick, told me, it's if you just take the novel and translate it, it's about 4 hours of material. And we need 8. So they've expanded it a little. So it starts out exactly like the novel, and finishes pretty much like the novel, but in the middle they expand some characters and change things. And I'm guess who? I'm not the good guy. I'm a bad guy. But it's pretty high level stuff, and I won't ever do anything like this again because we're locked down in COVID. My wife can't visit, but it's something I'll be glad I did when I'm through with it. I've got another month maybe.
So it's interesting that you're working, and you talk about the Jack Reacher character. Jack Reacher is kind of like a morally gray MacGyver.
Kind of, only he kills people, a lot of people. He's an avenging angel. He's like a superhero without an outfit, where his outfit is very low key. And he's a really interesting construct by Lee Childs, and fascinating the way he developed the character. And this time, Tom Cruise played him in 2 features, and there was a big hue and cry because he was the wrong size and shape for Jack Reacher. And we have in Alan Ritchson a really full-size, full-developed, big old Jack Reacher. He's 6'4" and 250 and jacked. So the Reacher fans will really like this, and it's well scripted and really well produced. It's an Amazon, and it's quite a production. But I do see what you're saying. There are parallels. He's a do-gooder that goes around the world righting wrongs.
And I don't want to take us too far away from MacGyver, but you've had an incredibly distinguished career with starring with a lot of famous people, including one of the greatest actors to have ever graced the screen in an all-time great movie. You might think I'm going to ask you about Daniel Day-Lewis, but I'm not.
Oh.
I want to know what it was like to work with Jean-Claude Van Damme on one of my all-time favorite movies, Time Cop.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to see if there's a volume on this phone so I can hear you better, because that was funny. Hold on.
That's my only question, Bruce, so you don't have to hear from me again.
Well, working with Jean-Claude Van Damme, he was a male chauvinist pig before they were saying that very often. But I was doing a scene with him one day, and I thought, why is this guy a star? I mean, yeah, he can do the splits, and he's kind of whatever. And but he, you could barely understand him, and he was not tremendously prepared as an actor as he was physically. And then one day we're doing a shot, his coverage over my shoulder to him, and he does this big broad smile. I was his buddy, and I went, "Oh, I get it. That is a dazzling smile. That is just a." And then he was not dissipated at all at the time, and it was just I said, okay, that's it. Besides the fact that he can do, martial arts, he's got a very engaging visage when he smiles. So that was his star. But he was fine to work with for me. I didn't have any fights with him. And funny, before I went off to do Time Cop, I was working with Chuck Norris on Walker. And Chuck Norris is a great martial artist. And he heard that I was getting ready to go work with Van Damme. And he asked me, he said, well, do you have any fights with him? And I said, no, I'm his buddy. And he said, well, good, he's really sloppy. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, there are 2 lawsuits against him now because he's not accurate. Chuck Norris was incredibly accurate. He did a spinning back kick into my solar plexus. And he said, okay, just don't move forward. If you don't move forward, you cannot get hurt. If you move forward, you could get hurt. I'll probably be able to discern it. But I said, don't worry, buddy. If I'm moving anywhere to fuck this up, it'll be backwards. And he does this, pardon my language, podcast, what the heck.
That's all right, yeah.
He does this spinning back kick and puts it right on target, and I could just about feel the breeze from the foot. But, just so precise. Every time, every take, and he was concerned. He said because Van Damme can hurt you because he's sloppy. So I went in looking at that, and I didn't have any fights with him, and I wasn't. I thought he was he thought it was funny, but the way he treated women would not fly now. I'll tell you that. And he thought it was funny, right? It was just I think he got his comeuppance later on. But as far as working with him, it was an easy part. It was one of those, I'm the guy back at the ranch, right? and until I got machine gunned, which was kind of amazing because when I was machine gunned, we shot that in Vancouver, and in fact we shot it at the Dominion, the Bridge Studios where we shot MacGyver. So I was back in the MacGyver land, and when they machine gun me, they have very tight limits on how big a load you can put in the squibs they use in the United States, but not so tight in Canada, and they're not as loose as they were in Italy on Cliffhanger. Man, those things, if you didn't get out of the way of those squibs, you could really get hurt. But I got machine gunned up against this machinery for the time, that big time wheel, and it's pretty exciting when a bunch of them go off on your body. Because the trick to squibs is you don't think about it. You relax, and your body will respond to these little explosions coming out of it. And the way people screw it up, actors, I mean, stunt guys know this, but the way actors will screw it up is by anticipating it and trying to act it. And you don't have to do it. It's pretty thrilling, and there's bits of wood in there, and there's splinters going everywhere. And kind of exciting. Anyway, that doesn't describe what it was like working with Jean-Claude. It was fine. I had no problems working with him.
I'm tempted to do another fake out here and mention Lincoln again, but then ask you about voicing Mr. Waterman, owner of the local cable company, on the Cleveland Show, because I love the Cleveland Show. But no, let's make our last question here about your portrayal of Edwin Stanton, Secretary of War under the Lincoln administration during most of the Civil War. And in 2012's Lincoln, highly acclaimed movie acting with Daniel Day-Lewis, who just was Abe Lincoln. But any thoughts on that experience and working with what many people consider one of the finest actors of all time?
Oh, it was just bliss. And when there's somebody that good, it's so easy. And I mean, I have to say that is probably the best working experience I've ever had. And certainly not the most lucrative, because they had 147 speaking roles, and the offer was scale plus 10% for your agent. And it was the best working experience, partly because of the material, Tony Kushner and Steven Spielberg's sure-handed filmmaking. And I say filmmaking rather than just directing, because it's, he's involved in every single facet, from the acquisition of Doris Kearns Goodwin's book, Team of Rivals, on which it's based, to the deal making, to waiting 10 years to get Daniel Day-Lewis to do it. And then he was so invested in taking care of Daniel's process. And it's widely known that Daniel stays in character while he's at work. And I'd heard that. You don't get a manual, it's not written down, but somehow everybody by osmosis knows that, he's going to be Abraham Lincoln all the time on the set. And I thought, well, okay. Once I got all that gear on and they shaved my head and put those weird hair pieces on and I looked like Edwin Stanton, not a great look, I have to say. Not the most handsome I've ever been. But once I got all my gear on and in my outfit, I looked in the mirror and I said, well, I'm not Bruce McGill anymore either. I'll just stay in character, too, with him. And I did, and it was a revelation. It was great. And part of the reason he does it is it saves a lot of energy, because he's a nice guy, and if people are engaging him as a person, it takes energy. He's very, very focused, and he's so prepared. I prepare really well, but he showed me a new level of preparation. Of course, he'd had the part for a year, and the material was tailored by many conversations between he and Spielberg and Tony Kushner. But when you work with, it's like I'm a musician too. I play guitar, piano. When you play with a really good musician, it's easier. It's not harder. And when you work with an actor like that, and by the way, he wasn't the only good actor in that cast. There were some very good actors. But my work with him, and I had I was fortunate enough to have good stuff with him. I'm the only one that got to yell at him in the movie, except for Sally Field. and he was just so present. But he was also, some things happened that were funny, actually funny. My fault, my bad. And you could see him twinkling Daniel behind the Abraham Lincoln facade. But he still was very much in it all the time, and Stephen was very, very protective of that process. And as far as I'm concerned, it made it easy. And we we would talk between takes, but we would talk because we both had done the same research, and we were playing actual people. And so we talked, but we talked about current events in 1864. And Stephen came up one day and said, "What are you talking about?" Because he was very careful that nobody talked to Daniel, you know. And he said, "What's going on?" I said, "Oh, we're just talking about things that happened in 1864 between these two guys." And he said, "Oh, that's great. He loves that." So it was a revelation to me, and not as weird as it sounds when you first hear about it, that he stays in character. But he does go deep, and he's well within that guy. And man, he says he's retired. I sort of hope not, and I hope I get a chance to work with him and Stephen again, because it was sublime. It was just great, and so focused, and the quietest set I've ever been on, even though the crew was huge, maybe 400 people. Not all the time, but the whole crew, when you look at the size of the production, it was just enormous. And yet there was no talking on the set that wasn't being done by the filmmakers around the shot. He's the best I've ever worked with, and I've worked with some good ones.
I know we're going to wrap up here shortly. We're talking with Bruce McGill, Jack Dalton from the original MacGyver. Great actor. Sam had his question about Daniel Day-Lewis and Lincoln. I have to ask about Animal House. I joked in an email with you about the whole 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon thing. You were essentially 1 degree away. You did co-star with him in Animal House, one of his first roles, if not the first role, and of course working alongside the legendary John Belushi and Donald Sutherland. Anything you can share just on that whole Animal House experience? One of your first roles as well.
It was my second feature. Certainly not one of my first roles. I'd been in the theater since I was 11. But the second film. And, at that time, getting a movie was really, really important. It was great. And I was doing Shakespeare in the Park, which was when I was 16 and I heard it existed, was my goal to get on stage at Shakespeare in the Park with a speaking role before I was 25. And I made it. And I was doing a production, I think it was a production of Hamlet, with Sam Waterston as Hamlet. And Mark Metcalf was playing a spear carrier soldier in it. And he got cast as Niedermeyer before I got cast, well before, because I auditioned for it and was turned down. I didn't get the part. And Mark got it, and I was just, God, great for you, but gee, I wish I was doing it. Because I read the script while I was, our play had ended, and I was now signing up for, in those days I was not incorporated, so when the job was over, I could qualify for unemployment, and that was very important to a stage actor. So I read the script for the first time in the line at the unemployment office at 90th and Broadway in Manhattan. And I'm in the unemployment office, which is not a cheerful place, really, and I'm laughing out loud because I can't help it. Because there'd never been a script like Animal House at the time. I'd never read anything like it. And so I knew it was funny, and I knew I wanted to do it, and I didn't get the part. But then shortly before we had to leave to shoot it, I get a call that they want to see me again, and that I get the part. And later, long time later, I found out when we were in the publicity stage, when we were doing the junkets to sell the thing, John Landis, the director, told the story of the mistakes when they were auditioning for D-Day, was that because D-Day had no really dialogue scenes, he had a line here and there, but they were having the guys auditioning for D-Day read Belushi's part. So it wasn't working, and so he had a list of these good actors that were all scratched off his list. He's telling this story to the press, and he had come to see a production, a Shakespeare show. Was it Henry V? Whatever. He'd come to see a play and seen me in it. So the studio was saying, "Look, we're starting shooting. D-Day is an important part. You've got to cast it." So he looked down at his list and said, "Okay, who's the best scratched out actor on my list?" "Oh, I saw this guy in Shakespeare last night. He was good." And John says that's how the decision was made. So that's like the most interesting casting story I have in my life, I think. And then, of course, we go on to shoot it, And we didn't know. People always ask, "Did you know it was going to be such a, groundbreaking comedy hit?" No, but we knew it was funny. And we also, to interesting thing about the playing of a script that's that good, you play it straight. I mean, everything we did, you do with an honesty to character, and that's when the script is good. That's what makes it good. And when the script is not funny, unless you're a true clown clowning, and that's only two-dimensionally funny for me anyway. But if the material is really good and everybody plays their part straight, it's funny. And so you look back at that movie, and even though Belushi was playing very broadly, that was true to that character. That's who that character was. So everybody was really... Landis knew this, and he cast a bunch of good actors. He didn't cast a bunch of comics. Not that a comic can't be a good actor. But then we just went there and we did those scenes and those realities honestly, and played it fully. And the rest is history. And it was great to do, and it was great to have Harley Davidson tuned up and kept in good shape by the Teamsters Union for me. That was fun.
So that was you riding the motorcycle up the steps?
No. I wanted to because I rode bikes as a kid, and I thought, hell, I could do that. But the studio said, "Are you kidding? You're a principal performer in a studio picture. You're not going to do that. It's the first week of shooting. You've got a lot to learn, kid, if you think we'd let you do that." So I went, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll watch it." And Gary McClarty, who was a stunt coordinator and one of the great, they call him the Whiz Kid. He was a great stunt driver and motorcycle rider. And I went to watch the stunt. And what he did was he folded up a piece of newspaper, put it under a piece of carpet that matched the carpet on the stairs to get the front wheel up. And then once the front wheel is up, it rides on the points of the stairs where the tread and the run meet until it gets to the landing at the top of the stairs. There's no stair to keep the wheel up. The frame hung on the top step. The motorcycle stopped instantly, and he crashed into the bookcase to the right side and nearly broke his arm. And I looked at it and I went, I'll be in my trailer. And so I learned then, and I've never wavered. The stunt guy will do it better than you anyway, and there's nothing to be gained. I mean, if I see Tom Cruise around, I'll say, "Okay, it's time to knock that off, Tom." But doing your own stunt, sometimes it's important to do it to whatever extent that you can, so that they have angles where they see the actual character's face. But I always defer. I used to do a lot of my own stuff and want to do it all the time. And then a stunt guy that I liked, he was a friend, he said, "It's our job, and you kind of make us look bad." And I thought, well, and this is something I have to learn over and over. You've got to put yourself in the other people's position and, get out of your own head and your own self-importance and think about things from other people's point of view. Not just in acting and in the movies and in the theater, but in life. It's first of all, it's a great teacher, but also it's just now I've come to think of it as common decency. But it doesn't come naturally to everyone, and it's a little, if there's 3 or 4 people involved, you got to do 3 or 4 times thinking around the circle. Anyway, I learned that at that time that stunt guys will probably do it better, and it's their thing, and they're not playing your part. You shouldn't do their part.
Thank you so much for being part of this. I mean, Animal House was the first DVD I actually ever owned. You go back to 1998 or so, I was trading stories with Sam. Talk about old technology. I had a Gateway computer and a DVD player, and Animal House was the first DVD I ever purchased. So I've had that memory of your performance for a long time now. I had honestly never seen the movie probably until I got that, but I had heard about it and wanted to make sure that was my purchase at that time. So love to hear the stories. So great.
Well, as I always say, I quote the movie when someone's talking about it. I quote, it's something that never looks bad on your permanent record chip, which is a line from an Omega, but it suits... people will say, they talk about Animal House, and they go, I know, that's so sorry, that's so long ago. I said, listen, it's always a pleasure if someone talks about that movie, because it's brought a lot of laughs to a lot of people for multi-generations now. And, you know, it's interesting how it holds up because we shot it. It was a period piece when we shot it. We shot it in the late 70s, but it was about the early 60s, or set in the early 60s. So, and it was shot, as I said earlier, we played it straight. We played those realities straight. So it holds up. It's funny.
Well, you've given us some excellent stories, some really unique insights, and even some pearls of wisdom. Bruce, you've been a fantastic guest, no doubt about it. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, and we hope that the new house you're building becomes home to many great memories for years to come. Thanks again today.
I thank you. I appreciate it. Good luck to you guys.
So he was not stingy with his time, had a lot of insight, great stories, and some opinionated takes as well. But Mike, appreciate you doing the work of tracking him down, and just talk to me about that process and your overall thoughts on the interview.
Oh, I'll start with the second thing first. I mean, the interview was really cool, and it's so great, and we had it with Anthony DeLongis and, again, with Bruce, when they want to give us that time. And in some ways, and we talked about this off air, we're like, well, should we keep going? And I'm thinking, if Bruce wants to end the interview, he's going to end the interview. Now, were we going to go 2-3 hours? No, but he seemed very content with sharing his time with us. He's, as you heard, filming a project in Canada based on the Jack Reacher stories, and the particular day that we filmed with him was, I believe, Friday, July 2nd. So it was Observed Canada Day in Toronto, and he had an off day from working and was happy to give us the time. So we greatly appreciate that. As for how I found him, well, let's just say that even though the border of Canada is closed for people coming and going, the power of making fun of MacGyver breaks past those boundaries. He heard about us. Why not put the two parties together?
So, two things stuck out to me from that interview, and one was, Sam, something you said about his character when we did the episode review that Bruce himself hit on, where he goes, MacGyver works so much better when he has someone to play off of, like where he has something to activate something out of that character. And Sam, you mentioned that as part of the quality of the Jack Dalton character, and Jack Dalton himself knew it. He's like, this is exactly why this works. It's because MacGyver's so stiff and plain. He needed like a chaos agent or something like that to make him do things. And also that he confirmed that Jean-Claude Van Damme was an asshole.
I love that.
He brought out the howitzer and just blows Jean-Claude Van Damme away and just splatters all Jean-Claude Van Damme guts all over the wall.
You know, you've got confidence in your position in Hollywood when you freely speak on someone else in that manner.
Yeah. He's retired. I mean, he talked about it. He's at the end of his career, but you know, it's pretty well known that Jean-Claude Van Damme was a giant cokehead and a huge jerk. And from my understanding, he's reformed himself. He was in an Amazon show called JCVD a few years ago that was quite good. But I just found his comments about Jean-Claude Van Damme to be hilarious and real. And I love it when people tell you the truth about someone like that, because it's so long ago. Like, who cares? So that was my two favorite parts.
That very well. That wraps it up. Thank you, guys. And thanks again to Bruce McGill. And a very appreciative thank you to our two Patreon patrons, Mia Morris and Bo Rigby. Yes, it does, Bo Rigby. Your support fuels our fire. And hey, check out Coastal Steampunk and Ultra Stanky on Instagram and Etsy. They are a local Australian business making funky and fashionable earrings with love. Hey, please follow us on social media. Say hi on Facebook or Twitter. Send us an email. That's makingfunofmacgyver@gmail.com. Throw something in the tip jar on Patreon. And keep coming back, because we're going to keep making fun of MacGyver. For Mike and Jeff, I'm Sam. Thanks again. We'll see you next time. Peace. Bruce McGill, where does your mind go when you hear the word MacGyver?
To my mustache and Richard's hair.